top story this morning, the ongoing backlash, the angry backlash to Boris Johnson's surprise move yesterday to suspend the UK Parliament. We're seeing protests. We're seeing a growing online petition, more than 1.4 million names on that petition. Legal action as well in Scotland and in Ireland. One of those challenges, as I said, right now in Scotland, the court there being urged to try to stop the move as unlawful, unwarranted and unconstitutional. One of Johnson's top cabinet ministers is calling the opposition, though, confected candy floss outrage. So there's lots of strong language on both sides. And we have someone with us now who is known for stringing some very good lines together and is very outspoken and has been known to be so in his opposition to Brexit. Well known to Canadians, a good connection with this country. Singer-songwriter, political activist Billy Bragg in our studio in London. What a fantastic opportunity to speak to you. Thank you so much.
Good morning, Heather.
Really appreciate the time today. I was mentioning what Mr. Rees-Mogg was calling this, the opposition. He called it sort of, phony outrage and confection opposition. How do you characterize what Boris Johnson is doing by proroguing Parliament?
Well, since Johnson became Prime Minister just over 5 weeks ago now, everybody's been waiting to hear what his plan is, the deal that he's going to get with the European Union that's better than the deal that Theresa May got. He wants the backstop, the guaranteed no border in Ireland.
Right.
He wants that aspect to be removed because he says he has a better plan, but nobody has heard his plan. And I think in proroguing Parliament, he's once again avoiding the issue because he knows as soon as he explains his plan, people will see how bad it is, how bad Brexit itself is, and then the moves towards stopping Brexit or extending the deadline anyway will be overwhelming, and he won't be able to deliver on what he's talking about.
It's interesting, some of the public opposition to this has come on social media, obviously hashtag stop the coup and online how to resist. I mean, would you characterize this as a coup, as undemocratic?
I would. Mm-hmm. I think it is undemocratic. I really do think the whole slogan of the Brexiteers during the referendum campaign was take back control, that the UK Parliament should be paramount in what happens in this country. And here they are trying to stop our parliamentarians from debating this issue. I mean, it's the biggest issue perhaps we've probably faced since the Second World War here in the UK. And, we desperately need to talk about it because so much of what's important about Brexit is in the detail. It's very unfortunate that the European elections recently, the majority of people either voted to get out with no deal or to remain. Nobody really talked about the nuance. And if anything is going to save us from leaving the European Union, it's the nuance around the Good Friday Agreement, it's the nuance about the Irish border, it's the nuance of our 40 years of negotiated settlements, both economically and socially with the European Union. Nuance is absolutely important here, and I'm afraid very few people have any time for it, whether they're Remainers or Leavers.
It's interesting, as you're speaking, we're looking at the scenes of the protest yesterday. I mean, there was a lot of immediate anger, a very strong amount of anger in terms of what Boris Johnson did by announcing this prorogation. But it looks well and truly underway, and there are those who say it's certainly within his constitutional authority to do so. So time spent to look at the nuance that you're saying, it doesn't look like you're going to have it.
Well, if Parliament isn't able to have a debate about no-deal Brexit, then we really will be in we are already in new territory, but we really will be in strange constitutional place. We have no written constitution in our country. The Constitution is made by whoever has a majority in Parliament. And that's a really big problem because the Constitution fundamentally is a set of rules by which we, the people, consent to be governed. And because we don't have a written constitution, everything's down to sort of procedure. And when you've got someone like Boris Johnson in there who really doesn't care about procedure, he's kind of smashing stuff up, it's really hard to resist that. But I think there is no majority among parliamentarians for no deal. So hopefully they'll be able to come back together and to manifest that in some way.
It's interesting, you're right. Lots of opposition even within his party, not liking this kind of move. And it sounds like Tuesday and next week will be key in terms of debate and some form of parliamentary response. You've been tweeting about this, one of the ways in which you let your messages and your thoughts be known. If I go back just to your earliest tweets in this, more proof that Johnson will go to any lengths to avoid debating his Brexit plans, because to do so would merely highlight his vacuity. The last person who tried to suspend Parliament was Charles I, and we know what happened to him. What do you think the consequences will be for Boris Johnson of this?
Well, I think it's kind of or bust, really. You know, he's either got to make no deal happen, in which he will then, you know, the Leave voters will be very pleased, or he's going to go down in flames, possibly even before the end of the month. He could end up being the shortest Prime Minister that Britain has ever had, because in many ways, no deal, in inverted commas, is an abstract idea like Trump's wall. It doesn't really matter whether the wall is built or not. It's the idea that the wall should be built that galvanises his support. And it's the same with Johnson. You know, nobody knows what's in the box marked no deal. In many ways, Brexit is like Schrodinger's cat. We're not going to know until we've got it, whether it's alive or whether it's dead. So by just saying no deal, he's putting down a marker that, you know, this is who he's going to be. He's going to define himself on whether or not he can get us out of the European Union by the 31st of October. It's going to be some Halloween.
By the same token, consequences not just for Johnson, but what are your concerns about consequences for your country if there is a no deal, if there is a hard Brexit in just a matter of weeks?
Well, Heather, these are the most divisive years since the referendum that I can remember in my lifetime. And I lived through the miners' strike in the 1980s, which was pretty heavy. But this is, you know, I think Boris Johnson could have probably got away with this if it was just a minority of MPs trying to thwart him. But the fact is that the referendum was won by a tiny majority, and consequently the government doesn't have a majority even in the House of Commons. So to say this is the will of the people, the will of the people is not settled on this. And ultimately it's going to come down to, I think it's going to come down to about what kind of country we want to live in. It's as existential as that now, Brexit or to not Brexit. So I think what he did yesterday has galvanised a lot of people. I think he's woken everybody up to the reality that he's just going to ram this through. And as I said, the last bloke who tried to do that, we chopped his head off. Thinking of consequences, another kind of ramification in your own music, in your own songs, in your lyrics. Is this giving you some inspiration? Do we watch for some of the thoughts and the things that you're putting to music right now? It does. It does, in the sense I'm trying to find a way of reflecting the whole, both sides of the argument. You know, it's very, you know, people who talk about Brexit feel that that Britain is no longer their country anymore. And I remember how that felt when Margaret Thatcher was Prime Minister. I felt this wasn't my country anymore. So I do have some sympathy for that feeling. But to think that those issues, the issues around social housing, the issues around waiting lists on the National Health Service, the issues about the need for more police can be resolved by leaving the European Union, they're wrong. What we really need to do is to stop the process at the moment and sit down, try and work out why people ask the Leavers what it was they really wanted when they were voting. Because my sense is they were people who've been ignored for a long time, and they finally had a vote that if they won this vote, they would get something. And it wasn't really about Brussels. It was really about them feeling they had some agency over their lives. And I think that we need to embrace that idea and find a way to make sure that everybody's voice is heard in this country. We have a voting system which is winner takes all. So if you don't, you know, your party doesn't win, your vote goes in the bin. And perhaps there's an opportunity here in this constitutional crisis to bring some real change, to make sure everybody's vote counts, that everybody's voice is heard, and that we can find a genuine consensus, because at the moment consensus is further away than any time I can ever remember.
Billy Bragg, a pleasure to meet you in person, and thank you for your thoughtful reflection on our program this morning. Appreciate it greatly. Thanks.
My pleasure.